Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Astrin Kartini, and I am the representative from my team to present the result of our research entitled Policy Reconstruction of Legal Entity State University as Taxable Persons. For today's presentation, the agenda is divided into four sections. First, introduction. Second, research method. Third, theoretical framework. And last, result and discussions. In order to face the social dynamic in the digital industry era 4.0, higher education is expected to be able to prepare human resources who are competitive in the world of work. However, the government policy regarding new education is in the form of 12-year compulsory education. That means higher education is still not a strategic target supported by the government to increase great human resources. Government has made several supporting policies. One of the supporting policies is value-added tax or VAT instrument. Therefore, the position of PTN-BH is independent, namely being an independent legal subject beside an individual. In 2017, the problem began to roll after the issuance of Circular Number 34 2070, which stated the treatment of the tax aspect of PTN-BH. The circular letter also explains in Article 2, letter B number 1, regarding the treatment of VAT on PTN-BH, which government must confirm all PTN-BH that deliver taxable services and taxable goods should be as taxable persons. As we know, educational services have exempted from the object of VAT by Article 4A, paragraph 3, letter G. Similar to community service, the delivery of these services is also exempted from VAT. Thus, referring to these two services, PTN-BH does not need to become a taxable person. However, if you look at the point of view of the delivery of commercial research services, then PTN-BH is eligible to be designated as taxable persons. The purpose of the policy is maintaining equal treatment with other entrepreneurs as taxable persons for submitting research services. However, this inauguration raises many pros and cons because the nature of PTN-BH is a higher education institution like educational institution in general. But on the one hand, by becoming a taxable person, all VAT paid by PTN-BH, such as VAT on construction services and VAT for the procurement of educational equipment, including teaching materials, can all be credited. Then, the determination of taxable persons refers to the threshold for the gross circulation of 4.8 billion rupiahs. It indicates that if all VAT administration in PTN-BH is centralized, they will be defined as taxable persons. The accumulation of more than research projects for each faculty makes PTN-BH a taxable person, carrying its administrative burden. The purpose of this study is to determine the impact of the determination of PTN-BH as taxable persons in terms of compliance costs. This research was conducted with a post-positivist paradigm and qualitative approach. This research uses qualitative data collection techniques, namely through literature studies and in-depth interviews with several sources: the Fiscal Policy Agency, the Directorate General of Taxes, tax observers, tax academics, legal academics, and the VAT division of the University of Indonesia. There are theoretical framework. This research is based on the following theories. First, Musgrave and Musgrave in 1983 state the public goods are social goods and define them as types of non-rival in consumption so that all members in a group can enjoy the same benefit. Social goods are available due to market value. This market value is caused by the emergence of negative externalities due to the production of public goods. One example of a public goods provided by the government is education. Education, which is included in these public goods, includes higher education. According to Hobson et al. 2008, stated that historically, higher education as a social institution provided public goods in the form of education and science. Kumport and Hobson in 2008 adds that a higher education institution was established to serve. Higher education institutions were established to train residents to contribute to society and conduct socially useful research. In public goods, the government needs to provide funds proportionally for higher education as direct support, research funding, and student assistance. The discussion in the study will focus on compliance costs or compliance costs. Compliance cost itself is one component of the tax operating costs, namely costs that do not arise if the taxation system does not exist. The definition of compliance cost is the cost related to the fulfillment of tax obligation by the taxpayer. The following are three types of compliance costs, namely direct money costs, time costs, psychological costs. PTN-BH as a higher education provider is expected to be able to improve the quality of human resources in Indonesia. However, the determination of PTN-BH as taxable persons, when viewed by a compliant cost, has a significant effect or not. Meanwhile, education is an important aspect that needs to be guaranteed by the government. The result of this study, higher education is an independent institution with special rights to manage institutions, such as Center of Higher Education, Research, and Community Service Delivery. The purpose of the higher education's autonomy is to accelerate the development of science and technology, the development of the self-quality of academic, which is following scientific norms and principles for the implementation of effective and quality management services in the higher education environment guided by applicable scientific norms. Meanwhile, the implementation of higher education in Indonesia can be held in academics, polytechnics, college, institutes, and university. The main activity of higher education is essential to carry out function and roles based on the mandate of Law Number 12 of 2012 concerning higher education. The financial aspect is one that is allowed to be managed independently by PTN-BH. That means the state gives the authority to PTN-BH to manage finance is an accountable manner. In terms of funding, PTN-BH has a source of funding from the government allocated from the APBN and APBD, commonly referred to as State Higher Education Operational Costs or BOPTN. Besides, student operational costs can also be a source of funding for PTN-BH as long as students' operational costs are adjusted to the students' parents' economic capacity. PTN as a legal entity is also allowed to seek covers of money from the business world and industry for the management of state assets in the context of developing higher education under the provision of law. Any change in the status of PTN-BH as taxable person will affect the compliance costs borne by PTN-BH because PTN-BH performs two functions simultaneously when it becomes taxable person, namely as a provider and beneficiary of goods and services. When a tax subject is defined as taxable person, the compliance costs borne increase. Although the relationship between the designation of PTN-BH as taxable persons and compliance costs is a logical consequence. It is necessary to examine more deeply what is the burden of PTN-BH when it officially holds the status as taxable persons. In the context of value-added tax, the VAT obligation is to calculate, collect, deposit at the VAT division of the University Indonesia, indicated that the designation of UI as taxable person caused direct money cost, time cost, and psychological cost to increase. PTN-BH has the authority to design an effective and systematic VAT administration system in the campus environment. An effective and systematic administrative system can reduce the number of compliance burdens to reduce the burden borne by PTN-BH when carrying out tax obligation, especially VAT. There are many VAT administration designed in PTN-BH that might occur when executed with fulfilling VAT obligation in a corporation. The faculties and venture units in a PTN-BH can be linked to a PTN-BH branch. Therefore, PTN-BH can make policies to create their faculty and ventura units with several tax ID. Suppose taxable person determination makes a PTN-BH make a branch tax ID in each faculty and the venture unit in PTN-BH. It will increase the compliance cost because the administration will be level 2 to 3 levels. When referring to an administrative system that is tiered or stratified, which is given the authority to make a branch tax ID for each venture and faculty, it will increase the compliance cost at PTN-BH. Taking into account the efficiency of compliance costs, there are two alternatives to reduce compliance costs borne by PTN-BH, namely, first, providing authority for branch tax ID number or NPWP only at the faculty and venture unit levels that are separate from PTN-BH. Second, the venture unit level of PTN-BH as the branch. Thus, the first way that PTN-BH can reduce compliance costs is by designing a simple and more efficient VAT administration system, either through consolidation between faculties and venture unit and the delegation of VAT obligation to venture unit only. Then, three people responded that this policy was a policy that did not injure the state's function in terms of providing educational services through the extension of the PTN-BH. The reason of this policy is equal treatment principle for other higher education service providers. The determination of taxable persons for PTN-BH still excludes education services in terms of collecting VAT, and PTN-BH should be an extension of the government as implemented by BUMN. What needs to be underlined in VAT collection by PTN-BH is that as long as the administrative mechanism must relieve PTN-BH and make it as efficient as possible, an assessment of this policy needs to be based again on the role of PTN-BH as a major milestone in higher education activities carried out. They are guided by Tri Dharma of higher education, in which educational services and research services, and also community service. The determination of PTN-BH as a VAT tax subject using a circular letter can be doubtful for its binding strength, because the circular letter is outside the hierarchy of Indonesian laws and regulations. There is no higher regulation stating the PTN-BH is a tax subject. According to Hans Kelson's theory regarding the level of norms, which states that a norm is valid if it is made in a certain way, that is, in a way that is determined by other norms. Then the other norms is an intermediary reason for the validity of the new norm. There is a direct relationship between legal norms with one another, which is commonly referred to as the superordinate and subordinate relationship. In short, a legal norm cannot exist that is not based on existing norms. Conclusion: the policy of determining PTN-BH as taxable persons does not harm the state function in providing educational services, because this policy applies equal treatment for other higher education service providers and other research providers. In the context of VAT, the government continues to emphasize and higher education services are exempt from VAT. However, this policy could distort the existence of PTN-BH in the implementation of higher education in Indonesia. However, the policy issued by the Director General of Taxes through Circular Letter Number 34 of 2017 has an impact of PTN-BH. This policy leads to increased compliance costs consisting of direct money costs, psychological costs, and time costs, especially direct money costs due to establishing a VAT division to handle the VAT obligations of the University of Indonesia. Other implications of determining the University Indonesia to become a taxable persons include increased tax payment, reduced competitiveness due to increased selling prices for goods and services, increased complexity, and greater risks of sanction. That concludes our presentation for today. We appreciate and welcome your constructive feedback and input to improve the substance of our research. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.